In part one, we covered the first half of the refrigeration cycle, and that was on the suction side. Just as a quick review, this part of the diagram, refrigeration diagram here, is where the refrigerant is in its saturated state, and we're adding heat to it and is changing state but not changing temperature. And it follows its way down through the evaporator coil until it hits a certain point. And at some point near the end of the evaporator coil, all the refrigerant has boiled off, and then it's all vapor. It drops off of the pressure temperature chart. It's not at a saturation temperature anymore, and now the vapor starts to pick up heat, and that's sensible heat, and we call that superheat. And then it enters into the compressor. Once that superheated vapor enters the compressor, it is then compressed. If you remember from Module 1, the gas laws, when you compress a vapor in a container that does not expand, it will increase the temperature of that gas. So what happens is, coming out of the compressor, we've now pumped it up to 278 psig, and this is still the superheated gas that we had coming in from the evaporator side. We've just pumped it up to 278 psig. So this vapor that comes out of the compressor is still in the superheated state. So the first part of the condensing coil is the desuperheating part, and you can see here, if you look at your pressure temperature chart at 278 psig, it does not correspond to 200 degrees Fahrenheit right here at the compressor. That's because we are still in the superheated state, and we need to get rid of that superheat and drop it down to its saturation temperature. So that's what happens on the first part of the condenser coil. And at some point near the beginning of the condenser coil, we have stopped desuperheating. We have reached the saturation temperature for the refrigerant, and in this case that happens to be 125 degrees Fahrenheit. Now we're in the change of state mode again. So now we have the refrigerant starting to condense back down from 100% vapor to 75% vapor liquid. Then we get down to 50-50 vapor liquid, and we're still changing state from vapor to liquid. And in this half of the refrigeration cycle, all of the heat that we picked up on the evaporator side in the changing of state over here is now released when it condenses and changes state back to liquid. So we continue to come down the condenser coil, and at a certain point we have now a solid column of liquid, and we have exited the saturation temperature and dropped off of our pressure temperature chart, and this is just a solid column of liquid refrigerant. And now any heat removed is sensible heat, and that's called subcooling. So you can see here that at this point we're still in the saturated state, 125 degrees Fahrenheit, but once it has condensed back down into all liquid, it'll start to cool down even more, and we release some sensible heat, and we drop the temperature down to 105 degrees. The reason we have superheat is we want a solid column of liquid all the way up to the top of the cycle and entering the metering device so that we have good refrigeration. We don't have any flash gases over here on the condensing side. So that is the refrigeration cycle, part 1 and part 2. Please watch and follow along as many times as you need to get this. If you have any questions, please note it on the forum or send me an email. And I'll see you on the next lesson.